Oh, that's good. Do you want us to stand or sit? What would be better for your camera?
Yeah. This one. Depends on you.
We can start sitting if you're able to, and then we can stand.
Okay.
Are we good with the recording? Awesome. Do you want to give an introduction, or should we just go ahead?
You just go ahead.
All right. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Matthew.
I'm Kenton.
And we're here to give a presentation on liberal arts colleges. We'll start with an overview of what liberal arts colleges are, how they compare to other universities, and then we'll be sort of talking about our own experience at Pomona College. We both graduated in 2015, and then going into a little more detail about the Claremont Colleges in particular, because they do attract a large number of students from California. They're relatively close, and they're also prestigious. So we can go into detail about the 5 colleges that reside there.
Cool. Yeah. So, a big thing for sort of prospective college students is, liberal arts colleges versus universities versus, technical schools, so, vocational schools, sort of based, around a certain profession. And so, kind of a distinction between liberal arts colleges and regular universities is sort of centers on the concept of, do we have those slides on like what are liberal arts?
Yeah.
Okay. So it centers on the concept of like what are the liberal arts? And the liberal arts, what that simply means, today is the liberal arts are subjects that may pertain to professional pursuits, but don't necessarily pertain to professional pursuits. So something like math, right? Math you can use in a ton of jobs, but you can also use math for different things. You can use it to solve puzzles. You can use it in your day-to-day life. Same with something like reading or writing. That obviously has job applicability, but is not necessarily, only applicable in job settings. So those are what the liberal arts are. And liberal arts colleges, they focus on these subjects, not exclusively, but the focus is that the students at liberal arts colleges will take classes in math, they'll take classes in reading and writing, they'll take classes in history, in the social sciences, and in the physical sciences, as well as, classes more specialized, for their majors. Go ahead.
Something you'll see at a lot of liberal arts colleges is some sort of breadth of study requirement where you are required to take courses in multiple disciplines as part of your first or second year. For example, at Pomona College, there's 5 different breadth of study areas. So like one would be in like the hard sciences, one is a language requirement, one is in the social sciences, and all first year students are required to take at least 1 course in each area. It's definitely something you'll see in a lot of liberal arts colleges, whereas most universities don't have that requirement. A few like Brown sort of work more towards trying to get you to take courses in a wide number of areas, but a lot of universities expect you to either know what major you're going to be in ahead of time, because you have to apply to a specific college or a sub-area within that university, or the students themselves have a much more focused idea of what they intend to major in. So I think we'll touch a little more on liberal arts, the definition in liberal arts colleges down the road, but this is just a short warm-up quiz. So these are 3 different schools here, and the data is taken from the class of 2021 intake data on the 3 college websites, along with the SAT scores and the endowment data taken from the sites in the corner there. I'm just wondering, does anyone have any idea what 3 schools these are? Show of hands, just anyone want to shout out if they have a guess of any of these schools? A, B, or C? Or Kenton, do you have any idea?
So we got some big endowments, which are indicative of a lot of people. The common perception is, oh, large endowment, it must be a university. But that's not always the case. And also, when you talk about an endowment, it's like, oh, this college has, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, or even billions of dollars, but their student body is also enormous. So when you do a little division, the per student endowment isn't quite as large as, you know, you might like it to be. So, you know, in looking at this, I don't want to guess wrong in front of all these people. So, I don't know.
Yeah, so just to recap, in case everyone's not totally familiar with all the terms here. So first generation being the number of students whose parents did not go to a college or university. Obviously the SAT and ACT scores, which everyone's familiar with. Acceptance rate being admitted students over total applications.
Right.
Endowment often comes from sort of alumni or donors, so it's sort of indicative to some extent of how wealthy and successful the graduates of that school are. Also correlative to some extent with you know, the history of the school, like how long it's been around, what's its legacy.
It also applies to stuff like financial aid. How much financial aid a school can give out, and then also for things like research, especially in the physical sciences. You know, what kind of research is being conducted on campus, what kind of experiments, you know, for things that require very expensive equipment. But then, you know, stuff like athletics, some of the endowment goes to stuff like that. But then, you know, facilities, libraries, new student living, classrooms, paying faculty, stuff like that. Cool.
So yeah, let's go ahead and start here. So first off, we have school B is Dartmouth. So you can see here as, you know, slightly higher average. These are all by average, the median. So not the mean. SAT score of 1520. And you can see that they're all pretty comparable, right? Within the 32, 33 range. SAT is hovering around 1500. And acceptance rate is the highest of the three schools, but around 10%, which is on the higher side for an Ivy League school, with the lowest endowment of the three schools. So a little bit under $1 million per student. You'll see school A is Stanford, which I'm sure a lot of people in the audience could guess. With the highest ACT score, the lowest acceptance rate, one of the lowest in the nation, and the highest endowment, which also makes sense. And again, this is data taken from the class of 2021, so it's 1 year out of date, but 2022 is, I think, just came out recently. And school number 3 here is Pomona. You can see that the SAT and ACT scores are in line with those of Stanford and Ivy League schools. It actually has endowment over $1 million per student, which, as Kenton mentioned, is relevant because Pomona has the smallest by far student body size. So although it does have the smallest overall endowment, when you think on a per student level, it's one of the highest in the nation. And you can see Stanford doesn't list its percentage valedictorians, but 30% of the admitted students for 2021 were valedictorians of their high school class. So you can see all three schools obviously have, you know, very difficult measurable criteria to get in. But the point I really want to convey here is that although oftentimes liberal arts colleges don't have the same name recognition or prestige as some of the bigger universities, the requirements and sort of qualifications of the admitted students are on par, if not better than, some of the most well-known schools in the nation. And again, this is 2015, highlighting this one in particular because Forbes changes their criteria from year to year on how they determine what is the top college, right? So I think this year Pomona's in like ranked 18th, so from year to year it can hop from, you know, number 1 to number 20, and it really varies on how Forbes chooses to measure those students at those schools. But this year in particular was particularly relevant because 4 liberal arts colleges made the top 10, and Forbes, along with the U.S. World News and Report, are 2 of the most accredited rankings lists. Yeah. And so you can see here, even though, you know, it shares a list with MIT and Ivy League schools in Stanford, you can see the 2 at the top are liberal arts colleges.
And one thing that's worth mentioning is something that Forbes puts in their criteria for ranking these things is stuff like salary. straight out of college for students. The percentage of graduates that receive jobs within a predefined 1 year straight out of college within the next 5 years, where they are, if they have that kind of data, that goes into the rankings, which is something that a lot of people care about, because you guys might be sitting here thinking, wow, a well-rounded education is nice, but what we'd really like is for college students to have jobs, well-paying jobs coming out of college. And on the Forbes list, that's something that's weighed in, and I'll let you know that's sort of a prejudice a lot of prospective students and their families might have about liberal arts colleges, is that because they don't have the name recognition, they don't necessarily translate into careers. But that's not necessarily true, and that's something that the Forbes lists reflect.
And that's something we'll touch on later as well, like how are job prospects influenced by the type of university or college that I attend or my student attends. We'll touch on that in more detail. One interesting anecdote I wanted to add is that originally when Forbes was refining their algorithm for how to rank these institutions, right? Because there's so many, multitudes of criteria they could choose from. And originally when they just put their algorithm to the test, this was back about 15 or 20 years ago, Pomona was consistently rated the #1 college in their algorithm, and they were so taken aback because back then liberal arts schools had even less recognition than they do now, that they continually tweaked their algorithm so that Pomona was no longer at the top, and that Stanford and Harvard and some of the more well-known schools were. So it shows you some of the inherent bias that a lot of even these top researchers had, and as you can see, it's still 10 years, 15 years later, liberal arts schools still snuck onto the list. And then the slide.
All right, so now you guys might be wondering, and I gave a little bit of an intro on what are the liberal arts. So where the term comes from is ancient Greece, and what the liberal arts were what the ancient Greeks believed to be topics that were necessary, essential for a free person, a participating member of society. And these subjects included stuff like grammar, logic, rhetoric, which is speaking, writing, as well as arithmetic, geometry, the theory of music, and astronomy. That definition has changed in ways over what has literally been thousands of years. So today, the subjects in the liberal arts include literature, philosophy, math, and social and physical sciences. What's important, the important distinction here is that the liberal arts, again, as I mentioned, are subjects that don't only pertain to professional settings, right? So they might be used outside of professional settings. Subjects that only apply to professional settings would be something like things you might learn in vocational schools, how to fix a car, how to become a mechanic, things that you wouldn't use necessarily in outside of a job, or you would only use in one job. Those are not considered the liberal arts. Now, going forward, that's not to say that liberal arts colleges don't offer those subjects. Many do. Many offer very job-specific subjects, such as computer science, for instance. So you can go ahead and change it. So, liberal arts colleges. What are liberal arts colleges? No two liberal arts colleges are quite the same, though there are a few defining characteristics. The first one would be that they are undergraduate institutions. These colleges do not offer graduate programs. The next would be that they emphasize the liberal arts in one way or another. That might be in the graduation requirements for their students. It might be in their interdisciplinary approach, meaning that they may require you could major in mathematics at a university, you can major at a liberal arts college, but the course requirements for those majors will vary based on what the college decides is necessary for their majors. Oftentimes, in liberal arts colleges, there's more leeway or more emphasis on interdisciplinary major requirements. Okay.
There's something you'll also see at a number of liberal arts schools. at Pomona, for instance, there's a PPE major, which is philosophy, politics, and economics. And so that interdisciplinary connection, so it's the combination of 3 different majors in one, where you have to take courses in all 3 disciplines. And that leads to a number of interesting sort of outcomes, because you'll see students who major in PPE go on to either like law school or finance or in iBanking, and it's sort of just it can lead you in so many different directions where you don't necessarily have to sort of hone in on one single career path at the point which you pick your major. You still have multiple options available to you. So I think it's a testament to sort of the structure of the major itself, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you chose this major, you have to now go down these next 5 steps. Yeah,
absolutely. And another thing would be that sort of a benefit that many people don't realize is oftentimes when it comes to picking a career and getting a job, is that you not only have to have an aptitude for what you're doing. So for instance, if you're a software engineer, like Matt is, you have to be able to code. But to get the job, you have to be able to write a cover letter. You have to be able to communicate with the people that are hiring you, but then once you have the job, the people on your team. And these are skills that can be fostered through an interdisciplinary approach. If you take an English class at a liberal arts college, you have more writing skills, which allows you to write a better cover letter for your software engineering job, stuff like that. So they sort of like bleed into one another in a beneficial way. And again, I'd like to say again, so this third point down, liberal arts colleges often offer degrees in sort of non-conventional liberal arts subjects. So these are subjects like computer science, something like economics, that we don't, when we think of liberal arts, we don't really think of these subjects, but the fact is these schools do offer these courses as well. Okay, so these are so when we think about what is a liberal arts college, these are some of the defining characteristics of most liberal arts colleges. So a broad curricula, again, that's a gesture to the interdisciplinary approach, but also the graduation requirements for all students. Meaning, if you're going to a liberal arts college, you can expect to take at least one class in all of the central liberal arts. So even if you're majoring in math or computer science, you're going to take an English class. You're going to take a philosophy class, at least one. And most liberal arts colleges, another thing they do for their students is they set up the graduation requirements so that you have enough room to explore other subjects if you want to. Many kids double major for that reason, but many don't. They pick one major, but then they explore other topics that are interested in them. Maybe they do a minor or 2. So that is a very defining central characteristic to liberal arts colleges. They also only offer undergraduate degrees, though a sizable percentage of liberal arts graduates go on to pursue graduate degrees at other universities. Smaller student bodies, so most liberal arts colleges are only several thousand students. Most are under 2,000. All of the Claremont colleges are under 2,000 students. This is so lower student faculty ratios. So smaller class sizes. Average class size, we have some data on each of the Claremont colleges, but average class size is usually in around 10 to 15 students, which leads to higher class discussion, more interaction between students and professors. And then moving on to the professors, this is sort of an academic cultural thing, but it's also just sort of in the job description for professors at liberal arts colleges is that their focus is more on teaching the students rather than research, which is often how larger universities determine tenure for their professors, but also generate revenue is through research. Go ahead.
One note on that is at a lot of larger universities, something that attracts some professors is the fact that they'll have avenues and resources to conduct research. And when research is your primary motivation for teaching courses, rather than teaching itself and the passion for teaching, it can result in two very different experiences for the student. As well as often at larger universities, you're taught by graduate students rather than the professor. And so a lot of your education can come from potentially less qualified individuals, or at least those who don't have the same credentials as the professor. So it's just something to watch out for, and something to balance when choosing a college or university.
Yeah, and so then liberal arts colleges, you know, statistics, publications, reporting on student satisfaction, faculty satisfaction, liberal arts colleges consistently rank higher than universities. Granted, universities span the spectrum. There are universities, certain universities out there, not necessarily top tier schools, that report low levels of, you know, student satisfaction, faculty satisfaction, high turnover, stuff like that, high transfer rates. But then there are also obviously universities like Stanford where the exact opposite is true. But liberal arts colleges consistently report higher student satisfaction and faculty satisfaction. And this last one is just, liberal arts colleges aren't commuter schools, which means that the kids live on campus all 4 years. And that's, you know, for several reasons. That's often due to, like, the college sort of mandates that, but then kids usually choose to, because the living quarters are nice, the dining halls are nice. It's easy to get to classes. You don't have to have a car if you don't want to. So it makes those things sort of easier, it makes living easier.
And something that a lot of liberal arts schools also espouse is a lot of the learning the students go through and the growth happens outside of the classroom. So it's the interactions in between classes, through like clubs, extracurriculars, activities, and even just conversations from living together. And the stimulation that comes from living with other students is something that a lot of liberal arts colleges really, really value. And I think both Ken and I can attest to, having lived on campus surrounded by like-minded peers for 4 years, really contributes to that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are people you interact with every day. You don't just, you know, run into these people in class and then they disappear. These are people you eat your meals with, you live next door to, you encounter them on campus, because these are, you know, tight-knit campuses, both figuratively and physically. They're like neighborhoods. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about most of this.
Yeah, so these are just some points, same points, sort of the dynamic, the cultural dynamic here at the, you know, liberal arts school. It promotes closeness, and that's a closeness just, you know, that students value because they feel connected to their peers, they make friends. These are friends that last, you know, a lifetime. But it's also closeness to their professors, which means you can have conversations with your professor after class. If you email your professor will email you back. Your professor isn't dealing with literally hundreds or thousands of other students. It's you and a select few other students. So you get things like lasting relationships. Professors will write you letters of recommendation. You also get stuff like research opportunities, because to circle back to this point, research does occur at liberal arts colleges. It's just not necessarily the emphasis for sort of the metric for which professors are judged. Yeah.
Two things I want to touch on regarding student-faculty relationships. One is the caveat that not all students want or need this type of environment, right? Some students would prefer to, you know, study out of textbooks and the professor's lectures, and rather than have a relationship where they feel obligated to meet with the professor outside of class, or you know, strike up a relationship, sort of learn, you know, just like it's different learning styles. So this, while, you know, helpful for a lot of people, having sort of the mentorship and sort of a closeness, it's not for everybody. And the second part is, while it is more characteristic of larger universities to have more lecture, you know, big lecture hall style classes where you might have hundreds of students listening to a single professor, it's not necessarily characteristic of all universities. So for example, Stanford, while it is a larger school, still boasts a small student-faculty ratio, and depending on your major, you are likely to have a small classroom. But it's something that more generally universities have larger class sizes. So if you took a computer science, had a computer science major at one of the Claremont Colleges or UC Berkeley, I could guarantee that UC Berkeley, would be a very different experience. It would be uncurved. You'd be likely to have class sizes of upwards of 100 students, and it's just a very different experience. And I'll touch on that more because I do have my personal experience at Pomona as well as friends who attended larger universities with the same major that I can speak to. This is just a list of some of the liberal arts colleges on the West Coast, because oftentimes people think about Amherst or Bowdoin or Williams or schools on the East Coast, right? But there are liberal arts institutions on the West Coast in the same vein that Stanford is sort of the biggest name on the West Coast, but there's a lot more colleges on the East Coast. There are big names on the West Coast as well, yet still most liberal arts schools are on the East Coast, with few exceptions in between, such as like Washington University in St. Louis, or schools in Minnesota, like Oberlin. But here's just a few of the ones on the West Coast that you might have heard of. And again, we'll be talking a majority about the Claremont Colleges.
Yep. Okay, so the Claremont College. What are the Claremont Colleges? The Claremont Colleges are individual liberal arts colleges located in Claremont, California. They are part of a consortium, which means that there is a relationship that these colleges share that we'll discuss further, going forward. They're often called the 5 Cs, the 5 Claremont Colleges. These are the 5 liberal arts colleges there. There are also 2 graduate schools, which are not liberal arts colleges by definition, but they are small graduate schools that many students at the Claremont Colleges will attend after finishing their undergraduate degrees. So the 5 Cs are Pomona College, Pitzer College, Claremont Mckenna College, Scripps College, and Harvey Mudd College. And each of these colleges, we have some data on them in following slides. They each emphasize slightly different things, and they each have slightly different cultures, specialities. So just some quick data on the 5 Cs is all 5 of them were ranked in the nation's top 40 liberal arts colleges by U.S. News and World Report. So out of all the liberal arts colleges in the nation, these 5 Claremont schools were in the top 40. So Forbes also ranked all 5 of them in the top 60 schools, just in general. That includes universities, technical schools, at all degree awarding institutions. All 5 of them were in the top 60. And one other thing, and this is kind of important, and this is unique to the Claremont Colleges, is that students attending one of the 5 can also take classes at the other 4, should they choose. There are some limitations to this, that if you attend one of the schools, you have to take a sizable percentage of your classes at that school, but you can also take a sizable percentage elsewhere. And this gives the Claremont Colleges, students at the Claremont Colleges, sort of the option to have a big university feel if they want to. Because collectively, the student body of the 5 Cs is north of 6,000, probably 7,000. And you can see in this last point here, there are over 2,700 courses offered at the 5 Cs. So you have the flexibility to, you might think, going to a school that's the size of your high school, you might not have very many courses. That's not true even at a single college level. Each of these colleges offer an incredibly dense amount of courses, but together they offer, as many or more courses than, a large university.
So is the kids gonna, they can pick the class across colleges, right?
Yeah, they can.
But is there any priority if, like, I'm in Scripps, I want to take a class in Pomona? So
right.
The
Yeah.
Pomona kids gonna take a priority?
There is priority. A lot of times, to my understanding, Matt can attest to this more because he took more courses elsewhere, but most classes have a quota, space reserved for students in other schools. So you're gonna get, your kids from other colleges are guaranteed, 5 to 8 slots in a course. That's often how a lot of them work. But then the schools themselves have data on, this is a course that is in high demand, or this is a course that is commonly taken by students from other colleges, not necessarily ones in our own college, so they will allot more slots. Priority is also often given to upperclassmen, not necessarily attendees of a particular college.
Yeah, and I think it's not uncommon for any course at Claremont Colleges to have representatives from each of the 5 schools. So it's rare that you would find a course that only has students from one school. And that all just leads to a more collaborative environment where you have people representing different schools, different cultures, different ideologies, all mixing and coming together in a classroom, which is really cool. And the other part is a difference often between between liberal arts colleges and universities. Again, not all universities, but some of the larger, especially public state schools, is it can be a lot more challenging to get into courses, even ones that you need for your major requirements at large state institutions. Whereas at the Claremont Colleges, if you really want to take a course, I would say that 95% of the time you'll be able to that semester. It's just a matter of pursuing all the avenues available to you, whether it's reaching out to the professor or just showing up to that class every single day until the professor tells you can stay.
Yeah.
It's a different sort of approach, right? It's because it's so much attention is paid to the student. You'll see an emphasis there, and it just means that you get lower wait lists, smaller class sizes, and the ability to shape and mold your schedule more freely.
Yep.
So this is a low resolution, very poor map of the Claremont Colleges. Basically, I'll just point out here. So the blue is Pomona. It's the oldest and largest of the 5 colleges. CMC is in the red there. Pitzer in orange up top. Harvey Mudd is the sort of horizontal one in the brown. And then in the middle, nestled between all 4 colleges, is Scripps. So in a game of Risk, you would probably not want to get Scripps. But you can see that the graduate institution as well. CGU is over here, and Keck is, where's Keck? I think it's tiny, right?
Isn't CUC Keck that purple?
Which one? The purple?
Yeah, it's like, it's at very south of Pomona, but then it's also next to CGU.
Yeah.
Is that it? No, whatever.
Anyway, so one quick thing to note is you can see actual roads, right, delineating the outskirts of campus, and this is roughly 1 square mile.
Yeah.
So you will, if you walk south to north, you will cross through potentially all 5 campuses, and you will not know that you've walked from one campus into another because there's no fence or line or drawing on the ground delineating the different borders. And what that does is it helps eliminate, since there's no physical boundary between the 5 schools, it's not uncommon to just walk across to another campus to the dining hall for dinner, or meet with a student on the campus, and it sort of feels like it's one big community versus individual schools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is part of the consortium ideology.
Though each campus is markedly different. For those of you that prioritize beautiful campuses, I would say that all the 5C campuses are quite beautiful, but they are all distinct. Pomona is the oldest. Pitzer has quite modern architecture. So does CMC, but in a different way. This is not my specialty, but each of the campuses do have a distinct aesthetic. So you can tell, but you're not, you can walk freely among them. Absolutely. And you can also dine freely among them. Most importantly, each campus has, Pomona actually has 2 dining halls. Every other campus has 1, but you're allowed to eat wherever you want. So no boring, same old cafeteria food every time. You can go different places.
So in terms of student dorm, each college has their own?
Yeah. So that's one thing. You live, there might be some strange, you can petition to live somewhere else.
There are exceptions. Actually, one of my friends from high school who attended Scripps lived off of the Scripps campus all 4 years. She lived on the campuses of the other schools. So it is possible, but it's unconventional. And a very, very small percentage of students would go that route.
But almost all students of all the colleges live on campus all 4 years.
over 99%.
Yeah.
And part of that, I mean, specific to the Claremont Colleges, is just because it's situated in a wealthy retirement community in Claremont.
Yeah.
So it's just very expensive to live off campus. But at the same time, there are more practical reasons as well. It's not shown here, but you'll see on there's a side avenue where Pomona has actually bought right along here some of the houses there, and you can apply to rent those out, and some students do take advantage of that. And those you're less likely to go to the dining hall, or you would only come to campus for your classes. And so that option is available to students who want that sort of sense of responsibility and whatever else that would afford you. But it's definitely not the conventional route.
Yeah.
And also, Scripps is a girls' school, right?
Yep.
But you mix with the, like live with the other 4 colleges together.
Absolutely.
How you kind of feel it's a girls' school? You can choose class. You can go to the other.
Oh yeah, you can attend a Scripps course as a male if you choose. You just can't go to Scripps as a guy. But yeah, as far as
it's not like you could walk freely on the campus.
Absolutely.
You can take courses.
We used to eat at Scripps all the time.
They do have the best food.
They have really good cookies.
So it's not really kind of unique women's school, right?
Well, it is a women's school, and they offer
in terms of student body, but.
Yeah, but also in courses offered, they have professors who specialize in
gender studies.
Gender studies, yeah, and I mean I'm not sure. I think we can go to their slide and see what the specialized majors are there, the most popular majors. But the most popular majors you'll see at each of the schools vary. They also vary, like in a particular school from year to year, but among the 5 Cs they vary.
And one thing though is Scripps is, I think as of a few years ago, it's just a non-male school, so anyone who identifies as anything other than male can attend Scripps is one point. And 2, like you mentioned, okay, so if anyone can walk through the campus or take the courses, what makes Scripps special? And the reality is a lot of it has to do with the overall culture, so like the types of students it would attract. So if you get along with independent, like-minded individuals who all have, a focus in, or feminism or in gender studies or art. Yeah, like there's definite value in getting those people in a room together and like living and breathing in the same space. It's led to a whole bunch of different sort of unique outcomes and as well as like it's a corridor for friendship.
Okay, so we're gonna go through each of the 5 Cs slide by slide, and these are just some of the like metrics or rather facts that we chose to put on here. There are many more facts if you're interested. These can usually be accessed at each of the college's websites, but sometimes you'll have to go to sort of user-generated data websites about stuff that past students or prospective students will upload to really get the full story on things like test scores for getting in, stuff like that. So
these are straight from the website though, right?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes the self-reported ones are less accurate just by nature.
Well, for Pomona's, they were all off the website. Some of the other schools won't report their exact mean test scores, but you can find that stuff on like the Princeton Review has data on that, reputable data. So this is the slide for Pomona College. Pomona is the oldest and largest of the 5 Cs. It was founded in 1887. It's at least one of the dorm rooms is the oldest dorm room west of the Mississippi. So it is quite an old school. And it's got about 1,600, 1,500 students depending on the year. The split is almost always 50-50 men, women. And you can see here like a very small student to faculty ratio, which is small class sizes. Average class size 15 students. And it offers 48 different majors and minors. And then you can see some data on its endowment, the cost of attendance, but then the percentage of students receiving financial aid, which is quite sizable. At Pomona, as I am fairly certain all the other 5 Cs are the same way, or the other 4 rather. They award financial aid based on need, not on merit. And Pomona's personal philosophy, I know this, I'm speaking to financial aid employees, is they want to make it, I'm trying to remember their language. They want to make it doable, but not necessarily easy to pay. So if you get into Pomona, it will be affordable. It might be a somewhat of a financial burden, but it will be, they want to make it so you can do that. So this leads to a large percentage of students receiving financial aid, and that is financial aid from the college itself. There are obviously outside scholarship programs, Questbridge Kids, I think Posse was outside. So there are also a lot of kids in addition to the school's financial aid receiving financial aid from third-party scholarship programs. And then you can see the Pomona's acceptance rate is quite low. A lot of applicants, exclusive school, and then you can also see, as reflected in just the test scores, which certainly aren't the only metric for getting into this institution. They're quite high. I mean, a little addition there. You can see how close the mean SAT score is to 1600, and this is the average SAT scores and ACT scores for class of 2022.
Yeah, and I think that going back to the financial aid part, I think that is a valid thing to raise, because liberal arts colleges are generally more expensive than universities, and so questioning whether or not you can afford to send your child there or afford to go there and take out student loans is something that a lot of parents and students have to juggle together. Pomona does try very hard to accommodate the financial needs of the students that plan to attend. And I believe they're also a need blind school, meaning that they will not deny admittance to the school based on financial situation alone.
Yeah.
It may mean that they're not able to fully cover an amount that a child needs to attend, but they won't just outright deny the student. And that's something that a lot of liberal arts colleges will do.
Yeah. So next on the list is Pitzer. And Pitzer, the only reason it's next on the list is because Pomona, for those of you interested in athletics, Pomona and Pitzer join forces for athletics, and the other 3, Claremont, Mckenna, Harvey Mudd, and Scripps, join forces. It is an on-campus rivalry. So Pitzer is, you can see the data on Pitzer. Pitzer is a smaller college than Pomona. It's also a much newer college than Pomona. And they, the main distinguishing feature of Pitzer is sort of its culture and its emphasis on, I would say, progressive ideologies, progressive studies, the environment. A lot of students that attend Pitzer are interested in these things. They're often interested in activism. And it's also a very exclusive school. You can see its endowment is a lot smaller, reflective of that it's newer. It's one of its, for us Pomona students, one of its best qualities was its farm to food dining hall food. It had really good dining hall food. It's a lot of students interested in sort of environmental issues, political activism would go to Pitzer, but it also offered, it offers majors in the natural sciences, the physical sciences. And something to mention really quickly is for some of these schools, particularly the smaller ones, like Pitzer, Scripps, and Harvey Mudd, some of the majors they offer are majors made possible by the presence of the other colleges. So you will take some of your courses at, say, Pitzer, but then some of the courses that are required for the major that aren't offered by Pitzer, you will get to go take at another school to complete your major. So it allows these colleges with really only like 1,000 students to offer a wide range of majors.
I have 2 questions. Yeah. So, like, if you want to major in, let's say you go to Pitzer and you want to major in something at like Harvey Mudd, then would your degree say it was from Harvey Mudd or from Pitzer?
So yeah, you couldn't major at, so Pitzer offers a list of majors, and if you go to their website, it will be something like majors offered by Pitzer, and it'll be a list. And then below that, it will be something like majors offered by Pitzer in conjunction with the other schools. So that is to say that if you choose this major, you can expect to take you will have to take classes at the other schools because they're just not offered at Pitzer. So those are all, that exhausts the list of majors you can take as a Pitzer student, or you can have. So it would, on your degree, it would say Pitzer. You cannot major in you cannot get a degree in a major offered only at another school. So for instance, if you wanted to major in gender studies, but you're a Harvey Mudd student, you're out of luck, because if it's not offered at Harvey Mudd, then you're not going to be able to major in it. But you'll find that a lot of these schools do offer these things that you wouldn't expect. At Harvey Mudd may very well have a gender studies major because of the presence of schools like Scripps.
Two things to note in particular about Pitzer. Actually, you said you have one more question, right?
Oh yeah. I just heard that like Pitzer kind of has this reputation of like druggies. To what extent do you think that's true?
I think that as probably the most progressive and liberal college, there is probably a more pervasive attitude of, indifference towards like the law or that sort of thing. But it doesn't. I don't think it means that. Put it this way, like you would have no trouble going to Pitzer and having a completely standard law-abiding experience. Like it's not like you would be forced or coerced into anything that you don't want to do.
It's probably the most it's probably the most cosmopolitan school, all things considered, too. Just in terms of, every metric possible. One being sort of acceptance of, okay, are you a full-time student? Are you here for an academic experience, but also a social one? Also one that a Southern California experience. Are you here? Schools like Pomona are often very rigorous, and they still have their own sort of accepting vibe that the students enjoy. Student enjoyment is central. But Pitzer is very, cosmopolitan is the best word I can come up with. It's very accepting.
Yeah, so I guess to recap, I think like the reality is almost all colleges, right, will have some, drug use or alcohol use or, just something that's typical of American college culture. Pitzer is just a school where you're less likely to have it frowned upon for doing it, but it's not that all students partake.
Yeah.
Two interesting things about Pitzer in particular. One is that it does allow you to create your own major. So you can actually create a major that isn't existing on the Pitzer major list, and petition to compose it from colleges offered by Pitzer and other schools. For example, I have a friend at Pitzer who was really driven to become a manager for restaurants. He wanted to manage restaurants, everything from finances to sales to how it's performing. And we crafted a major that combined economics theory with practical restaurant and sort of culinary skills. And he was actually able to successfully get that. And if you go to look at his major, it's like restaurant management or something like that, which is obviously very, sort of off the wall and unique. The other thing is that Pitzer is a test optional school, meaning that you're not required to submit your SAT and ACT scores, and that's something that not very many schools have. And yeah, again, I personally know students who did not submit their test scores and were able to be admitted. So it's not like one of those things where they just say it and don't actually admit students. They really commit to it because they do understand that you can't just measure a student based on test scores, and by selecting only students with higher test scores, you're sort of self-selecting a small portion of qualified students.
But that's only happened to Pitzer or all five?
Just Pitzer.
Only Pitzer.
Only Pitzer.
There are other liberal arts colleges that do have the same approach.
Reed, I think. Reed has the same approach up in Portland. But yeah, it's a fairly new thing. But yeah, so Claremont Mckenna. Claremont Mckenna is another second largest college in the 5 Cs. Defining, it's got, some of the common characteristics that all of them share: small class sizes, a large number of faculty based on the number of students, or rather relative to the number of students. You can see sort of at the bottom of this slide, the most popular majors in Claremont Mckenna include economics, government, economics and accounting, math. These are really some of the more defining fields at Claremont Mckenna. A lot of students take these. That's not to say they're the only ones, but a lot of students at Claremont Mckenna, go into business fields. This doesn't really matter. I think it used to be a men's school. It's not anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time. And yeah, I mean, it's got the second largest endowment. You took a course at Claremont Mckenna, so you can kind of speak to the sort of the culture there.
I mean, I would say honestly, Claremont Mckenna is the most career-driven school, right? Like, it probably, I mean, I don't have any data to back this up, but I would imagine it has the highest average salary of any graduate, because students are more likely to go into higher paying fields, whereas Pomona is more likely to have students go into a nonprofit industry or into graduate school, which doesn't immediately pay as much as a career in investment banking or finance consulting. But that being said, so I was a philosophy minor at Pomona, and the best course I took in philosophy was at Claremont Mckenna, which you wouldn't necessarily expect Claremont to have a strong philosophy program. But I mean, the professor was straight out of, it was his, I think, third year teaching from graduate school at Harvard, and he was incredibly, just incredibly talented professor, and it was a political philosophy course, and even now, that was probably one of the most valuable courses I ever took, even though it didn't relate to my current field as a software engineer directly. Yeah,
and that's, just piggybacking off that, is oftentimes you'll choose, students will choose to take classes, students will choose to enroll in colleges based on professors, or based on, reputation that changes, because departments, majors, that their success is sort of determined by faculty in large part, and that changes. Obviously, there are standards that are built across decades, and talent recruits talent, but it does change. So moving on here to Scripps. Scripps is the women's college in the 5 Cs, so you cannot be a man and attend Scripps. However, you can be a man and attend Scripps classes. You just cannot get a Scripps degree. As you can see, Scripps, Sloan and I were, Matthew and I were mentioning, classes like gender studies, art, stuff like that at Scripps. But the fact is, Scripps offers an incredible array of majors and minors. And again, some of these you can accomplish by taking classes exclusively at Scripps. Some of them, you take a large portion, but then you will have to take, classes elsewhere. But they are Scripps degrees. Scripps is the second oldest college in the Claremont consortium behind Pomona. And its acceptance rate is notably higher, but that is because it gets half the applicants, as you can imagine. And Harvey Mudd. So Harvey Mudd is the final one. Did you take a class at Harvey Mudd?
I actually didn't.
You didn't? Okay. Well, so Harvey Mudd is the most specialized of the colleges. It is a sort of quantitative studies and physical science driven liberal arts college, which is to say that we weren't Harvey Mudd students, but Harvey Mudd, it still has the same liberal arts requirements that the other colleges do, but the majors it offers are, you can see them written down there, computer science, engineering, mathematics, physics. You can't be a Harvey Mudd English major. That's not their specialty. So it might have the most distinct cultural identity, just in saying that most of the kids at Harvey Mudd are STEM driven. That being said, you know, STEM courses are offered elsewhere. STEM majors are offered elsewhere. So, yeah, I mean, that is really sort of the defining characteristic of Harvey Mudd. You can see the very high test scores. If anything, Harvey Mudd might have a culture that is where Pitzer is cosmopolitan and Pomona students are often some of the most well-rounded. They were valedictorians, but they're also, you know, rabid volunteers. They're also athletes. Harvey Mudd has more, I would say, specialized students that excelled in these certain areas, whether it be test scores or just extracurriculars, you know, in the fields of computer science or physics, stuff like that.
A few things on Harvey Mudd. One is, while it does have more general requirements, it also has more direct requirements, which is every student must take a certain number of computer science courses, which is sort of unique. Like, how many schools actually require that you take a computer science class? So even if you don't, you know, even if you're a biology major, you'll have some, you know, understanding of computer science and engineering. Also, for better or for worse, to all the like female or non-male potential STEM majors out there, well, the class of 2022 acceptance rate is 6.8%. There are, you know, many more male applications than female, so your acceptance rates will differ based on your gender. So the actual acceptance rate for a, you know, female applicant is, I can't say off the top of my head, but it's probably in the 20 or 30%, whereas for males, unfortunately, it's a lot lower. And that's just one of the realities of sort of, until, you know, there are more, you know, women in technology, that's just, you know, a fact of life.
So, yeah, this is something you can take.
Sure,
you did
sure.
a serve, right? You should talk about the serve program.
So, talking just, I think we're getting close to the end, and then we can sort of do a Q&A for anyone who has more targeted questions. Something I just want to touch on, this is Claremont College, actually Pomona specific, but all the Claremont colleges have similar versions of this, is around research and internship opportunities, right? So Pomona has something called the Summer Undergraduate Research Program, or SURP. And as you can see, 237 students, which is like an eighth of the overall student body, and it actually only about really like a sixth of the eligible student body, because people who had just graduated or are incoming would not be doing something in the summer, obviously. But you can see that over 200 students partook in a SURP, and like, so what is a SURP? It's where you submit an application saying, I want to conduct this set of research, oftentimes with a Pomona faculty member, with this desired outcome, and Pomona will go ahead and, you know, take in all the applications, select what it believes to be the most important or most valuable, and award an amount of funding for that. And because, I mean, we mentioned Pomona has a $1.2 million per dollar endowment per student,
which is over $2 billion
overall. Yeah. It can afford to grant a lot of funding for these opportunities. So, for example, the summer after my first year at Pomona, I petitioned to work with a Korean American English professor, which English was not my intended major, unlike Kenton. And so I had really no justifiable reason to do this, other than that I thought genuinely it would be interesting. And Pomona paid me to go to Korea for about 8 weeks and do studies on the effects of globalization on Korean youth culture in Seoul. And so they paid for my flight over there, they paid for my lodging while I was in Korea for 2 months. And something that, like, you know, looking back, like, changed my life. And I'm obviously grateful for the opportunity, but like, it's something that I think is relatively rare to find at a larger institution, is this sort of like, on a personal level, like awarding funding to students. And I think about like 75% of these applications do get a level of funding. So it's not something that only 10% yet. It's something that if you really are passionate and want to do something, you can find a way to make it work. And if it's not through a CERP, there's multiple other avenues you can pursue.
And that's another thing is larger universities will often advertise, we have these internships, we have these research opportunities, but what's really going on there is those things exist, but a very small percentage of students get to take advantage of them. But a general rule is when a liberal arts college is advertising these things, a much larger percentage of their student body is actually taking advantage of these services and getting to use these opportunities. And that's reflected in things like the CERP program.
And then just a few ending notes here. So one was the Association of American Colleges and Universities in 2013, did this very large study with a whole bunch of questions that they asked employers, right? Because at the end of the day, it's very important that employers and those in charge of employment, we're able to see the impact of the higher education institute you go to on sort of the outcomes and the applications. So they found that 93% of employers say that a demonstrated capacity to think critically, communicate critically, clearly, and solve complex problems is more important than a candidate's undergraduate major. So what that really means is that while you'll see, for example, computer science, right? You'll often see requirements, 4 years, bachelor's degree in computer science or equivalent. However, what they found was that what's really more important is, candidate think critically, process everyday situations, manage, be managed, work with their peers. There's a lot more to it, a lot more nuances than just did they major in the field of study that's directly related to their job. And what you'll see on the following slide is just a recap, but that thinking critically and thinking creatively is something that you'll see at liberal arts schools, and also just I think a sort of a general bucket you can categorize a lot of these bullet points in is support, right? So if you're not doing well in your studies and you're averaging C's or something, like someone will reach out to you and say, hey, what's going on? Like, how can we help you along the path to success, right? Like, whereas you don't get that individualized support at larger universities, right? Like, someone like coming up to you and finding you and seeking you out. You have to be a lot more proactive in a larger environment. Another thing is, Pomona at least has a 98% retention rate. You'll see, I think retention is a pretty decent indicator of like overall student satisfaction and happiness. So the fact that only 2% of students drop out, that's actually very, very strong for a higher education institute. It's very common for students to go on to graduate schools, fellowships, basically, the other thing I want to touch on is the collaborative environment. So this is something that isn't just liberal arts schools, but I think there's a distinction between East and West Coast schools, is like the competitive versus collaborative, right? Like to some extent, oftentimes you're competing against your peers, right? You want to be in the top X percentile in your class. You're getting, a better test score than some number of students. At the Claremont Colleges and a lot of West Coast schools, you don't get that. So there will never be a curve where your performance is based on the relative performance of the other students in the class. Rather, if everybody just does exceedingly well in one semester or one test, then just that's reflected. Everyone does well and gets a higher grade. So what that promotes is an environment where people genuinely want to and are willing to work together. So for example, for like STEM classes, you'll often see mentor sessions where students will come together and collaboratively work on problem sets and assignments. And there's a lot of implied integrity there, where it's assumed that students will not cheat or just copy off their fellow peers. But I think that's something that we found really valuable at Pomona, because what that means is that people are just trying to you won't see something where someone's going to hide their answers from someone else or be unwilling to help.
Right. It's not cutthroat. It's not a sink or swim environment. The faculty and your fellow students want you to succeed. and you sort of buoy one another, and you find opportunities that way, but you also learn that way, so you become more capable in your field.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to sum it up. So yeah, these are our email addresses. Feel free to shoot us with any questions you might have regarding this seminar. We can post the slides if you'd like them as well. But we just want to open up the room. I know we went a little bit over here. But if anyone has any questions that they'd like to sort of ask about, whether it be liberal arts related, Claremont College related, or just about our own experiences at Pomona, so just feel free to shout out if you have anything.
Question here.
Yeah.
What type of students does the school prefer, and what's the normal student profile? What type of school they come from, or where they rank in high schools? And
Sure. So I can definitely provide you more details with that offline.
Yeah. They're very transparent about the demographics in terms of stuff like male, female, international students, even like racial background. They have like a ton of metrics on that that are readily available.
Yeah, you can see like the public-private school division. You can see first-time generation college students. You can see, I think something around 80% of students were in the top 10% of their graduating class, with 30% being valedictorians. So that's sort of a baseline. But more generally, like I've worked as an alumni interviewer for Pomona for the past 3 years, so I can tell you that a surprising amount of attention is given towards the students. Ken's mentioned this, but sort of well-roundedness, like and intellectual curiosity. So the interview is actually weighed higher than a lot of other schools because it's really the only chance given to interact with the student.
So schedule an interview if you want to go.
It's actually expected, I think, for most of the Claremont colleges, that if you are a California resident, then you will interview, usually in person, because it's a very, very important part of the application process, and the only less quantified version of the student they get to experience. So like there's a whole section devoted to like, does this student exhibit intellectual curiosity and like a passion for what they want to learn? And if you're unable to give like a compelling answer there, it's going to hurt the student's application. So definitely, the short story is schedule an interview, and also make sure you come across as passionate about your intended area of study, with the caveat that it's perfectly expected and normal to not know in advance what you want your major to be. So as long as you show a passion for learning, it doesn't have to be, I have a passion for this exact field.
Yeah, and in fact that is the sort of undetermined, or rather undeclared, as they would say, in the collegiate setting, is they don't expect you to be a specialist before you get there. Whereas often larger universities, to sort of be able to pigeonhole students into their courses and be able to budget departments correctly, they need to know what you're going to major in quicker. Whereas the emphasis in admissions in liberal arts colleges is more on how do you fit into this school on a broader level, on almost a societal level. Does your intellectual curiosity, does that gel well with the other kids? Is that gonna work well no matter what major you decide to choose? And a lot of that is test scores are important. Absolutely, they're necessary but not sufficient. So a lot of applicants are gonna have great test scores, but how you distinguish yourself as a person, through your essays or through your interviews, absolutely being able to talk to somebody who's gonna report back to admissions. It's important. So it's like meeting a person. It's like dating, for those of you who have dated before. You really want the college to get to know you, not just your scores.
Yeah, I would say along with the interview, the essays are probably the most important characteristic of a student's application, because it's the written expression through which they get to experience a student.
Yeah.
I also want to add one more anecdote, which is, so I worked for 2.5 years as a software consultant for a company with an office in San Francisco, and I'm now working at a startup, a tech startup in San Francisco. And I reached out because I'm going to, there's a career fair at Harvey Mudd every year where students meet with potential employers and interview and try and find jobs. And I reached out because my company is actually, we're flying down there to interview students in about a month. And I met with the head of career services at Harvey Mudd, and he actually gave me the resumes of all of the remaining students from the last year's graduating class who hadn't found jobs that they wanted, and which just goes to show you like that there's someone looking after them, making sure they find a career in a field they're interested in, 6 months after graduation, which is something that I think at a bigger university you're very unlikely to find.
Yeah,
just that level of continued support even after you've graduated.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Excuse me.
Liberal arts school, right?
Us too?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we both went to Pomona.
So I know the good things about it. I'm just kind of debating. But if I ask you a question now, you think back, if I ask each of you, what are one thing you think is missing, you wish you could have the liberal arts rather than compare with big universities? Are there anything you think might be missing?
So one of the main reasons I chose a liberal arts college is because I had no idea what I wanted to do after high school. And kids like me are more appreciated at liberal arts schools. I mean, provided your test scores are good and you write a good essay and stuff like that. They're more accepting of that. So I really had no idea of sort of what a university could bring, because I didn't want to jump into a major immediately. That being said, this wasn't true of me, but it is true of a lot of students. It is liberal arts colleges, the student social life is often described as a second high school, because it's small. You know everybody, you know your neighbor, and that can be good, but it can also be like, okay, like I see you everywhere, you know who I am whether I want you to or not, kind of deal. It's not like you can't keep to yourself. You have, everyone after freshman year, you won't have a roommate. You can be private, but at a university, some of these universities are the size of cities. You can be anonymous if you choose. You can keep to yourself. You can commute to school, stuff like that. Not that you can't do that at a liberal arts college, but the culture makes it more difficult, just because of how tight-knit it is. So if that's something you really, really appreciate, is your anonymity, you might be able to find that easier in university, where you can get lost in a larger sea of students.
I guess contrary sort of to Kenton's, very confused high school situation, I wasn't, completely certain what major I wanted to do. I imagined it would be in a STEM field, because I had taken a computer science course in high school, and this was sort of back before it was almost mandatory in high school. It was back when it was sort of uncommon to take a computer science course. But that being said, I started off, taking philosophy courses, didn't move into computer science until my sophomore year. And in somewhat of the same vein as Kenton, I would say that you don't get the same level of responsibility at a liberal arts school, because they don't after you, to such a great extent. You have to think about your meals or cleaning up your apartment or any of that, because there's someone that comes and does that for you. So it's really the full impact of the quote-unquote real world doesn't hit you until graduation day. And in that same sense, the school helps you find internship opportunities and helps you connect you with people to do research with and all that. So a lot of the whole real world sort of having to make connections and go out and be proactive. I think I would have had to do that earlier at a university, and building those skills earlier might have prepared me to some extent better. And just because there is more inherent diversity at a university, I'm sure there's opportunities that I could have sought out there that would have differed from a liberal arts opportunity. Not saying it's better or worse, but I think it's just, a different experience.
It's a different culture. Yeah, I mean, in university, you're going to get kids who are there just to be athletes, and you're going to get kids who are there on full ride scholarships for a very specific major. Whereas at a liberal arts college, almost all the kids are good students and good academics, involved in their community, stuff like that. But there's some homogeneity there because they're all good students. So you're going to get these colleges prioritize diversity. That's partly how they admit the students they do. That's some of their most important criteria. But at the same time, there are commonalities shared, which are stuff like high test scores, prioritization of school versus extracurriculars or athletics, stuff like that.
I have two questions. First is you mentioned, one of the slides mentioned about the SERVS program. Yeah, is that specific to Pomona or other 5C colleges also have this program?
So that particular program is specific to Pomona, but the other 4 schools have very similar programs of their own. And while it might be slightly more selective because of just less funding, I would say that if you're really passionate about pursuing that research opportunity, you will be able to secure funding. Like I know of very, very few students who had difficulty in the end, securing funding for the opportunity that they're looking for.
So does the student need to talk to the professor?
Yeah, like basically even if that particular funding avenue doesn't work out, they just need to work with the professor to find a channel that does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the second question is, normally when will the student need to declare their major?
Oh, when?
Yeah.
End of sophomore year.
End of sophomore year.
So halfway through.
Oh.
It's still possible to change your major at that point, but you need to petition and sort of the reason behind that is you have to demonstrate that you'll still be able to graduate in 4 years.
Yeah.
And taking X number of courses, in Y semester. And it's just like a process thing.
So in the first 2 years, do you select any classes you want, or you have some requirement you need to select?
Both. You would select your courses based on sort of like, maybe by the end of freshman year, you've taken 4 courses. Some of them are just required core classes, which may or may not necessarily apply to a major.
More than 4 courses.
Yeah, that's right, 8. Sorry, excuse me. But you will. If you're smart, by the end of freshman year, you might be like, okay, these are the 2 majors I'm considering, or the 3. I'm going to take 1 class in each, so that when I declare, I'll already have 1 or 2 classes done towards my major. But it depends. You have wiggle room to take classes that may not be in your major. Or I double majored personally. I did English and philosophy, so I had to take a lot of both. A lot of English classes and philosophy classes, but I still have room to take other things. So, and it's also, you get paired with an advisor, which is a member of like a tenured faculty member that makes sure, like an actual professor, makes sure you're on track to graduate. So they'll meet with you at least once every semester, for most kids more than that, and they'll say, okay, what are you taking? What are you thinking about majoring in? Like, what do you have left to do? Okay, you think about majoring in this, let me show you the requirements. So the student knows, okay, if I want to do, if I want to do English, I know I need to take 8 of these courses. And so you plan ahead, but you have resources to help you plan before you declare. And like Matt said, when you declare, you can change. Okay. It's, you petition. It's the college's chief concern is that you graduate on time. And almost all students do. There's very few that don't. And the other 1% need 1 extra semester.
So if you already take some classes in high school, AP classes, do they accept?
So I can only speak for Pomona, and when we went to Pomona, they allowed you to apply. I think it was 2. You got 2 as a
plus language.
Yeah, as a last sort of. If it didn't work out at the end, if you were a class or 2 short from graduating, they would be like, okay, so what AP classes did you take? And I think they only accepted 5s, but you could use it to, if you didn't quite, finish up. If maybe if you were trying to double major and that made it so you couldn't do one of your cores, they would be like, okay. and they would look for an applicable AP class, and they would allow you to use it. But 2 maximum. Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Would the study experience in the college help you to apply for the graduate university in England?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the competition compared with if the bachelor is from the university?
I would say so. I mean, so I didn't go to grad school. I just worked straight out of college. So did he. So we can't speak personally, but we knew many kids that got into very prestigious graduate programs in the United States and elsewhere, straight out of school. The name recognition of at least the Claremont Colleges goes just as far as you know, any university, especially in the academic sphere.
And I think one thing that's valued is you don't necessarily have to have majored in your intended graduate school focus area. So I have a friend who will be attending Stanford in the fall for data science, and she majored in math with a very abstract mathematics. But because she has that theoretical foundation, they saw the utility in this data science application. So although she didn't have a computer science background or an AI background, they were willing to admit her just on the basis of her degree alone.
Yeah, a lot of it's based on also the work you do at the school. So your thesis, stuff like that, the research you conducted, and obviously the resources to accomplish those things are greater at a place like Pomona.
So for computer science major, so what's the difference if you in Pomona and Harvey Mudd?
Sure. So I would say on the whole, there's not as much of a difference as you'd think, because there's a lot of shared courses between the 2 schools. So for example, one of the course requirements is everyone takes an algorithms course and an operating systems course, but it's offered at 1 school per semester. So in the fall, it's offered at Harvey Mudd, and in the spring, it's offered at Pomona. So any intended computer science graduate from either of the 2 schools, if they need to fulfill that requirement in the fall, they'll take it at that school. So like roughly half of the Harvey Mudd graduates take operating systems at Pomona because it's only offered at 1 school per semester. So there's so much overlap between the 2 curriculums that it ends up being a very similar education, regardless of which school you attend.
How is your alumni network connection? Some schools, they seem are very proud of their legacy, and then they seem are helping each other out in the career area. How would you say about the IC school or Pomona?
I mean, for me, I'm working with you guys because of Matt, and I met Matt because of Pomona. So there's one example. And then this isn't really an alumni network, but I work professionally as a freelance writer. I write content for businesses looking to improve their presence online, just basically get more clients. And how I got into that field was just like anybody else, submitting a resume and a cover letter. Though I was told by the person that hired me at my very first job that why he chose me was because I went to Pomona. Like he knew that I would be a good candidate, a hard worker, a capable writer. That's what put me over the edge. However, what you asked was alumni sort of network. While you're at Pomona, what the Career Resource Center? The
Career Development Office.
Yeah. So there's an office sort of devoted to putting students in contact with alumni in certain fields, but also making students aware of jobs, job openings. Matt can talk more about he was flying out for interviews while we were seniors in college. And was that made possible by the CDO or through the department or what?
So I mean, the career fair, I would say over half of the company representatives were alumnus from the different Claremont colleges. And for example, I'm going down, in a month to the career fair as an alumni representative of Pomona, made possible because I'm an alum. And similarly, my first internship, which I did junior year, which was a software development internship in Santa Monica, the founder and CEO of the company was a Pomona alum, and he came back to the career fair because of his connection, and specifically was seeking students from those colleges. So I'd say, personally, my internship, my current job, as well as going back to hire new candidates has all been influenced by my relationship as an alum, as well as a very high percentage of students from the Claremont Colleges end up in the Bay Area after college, because some of the biggest majors are economics, the hard sciences, computer science, and there's so many career opportunities that they end up clustered together. So we have a pretty wide array of friends and connections that all live now in the Bay Area, and it's very easy to keep in touch these days, with technology.
Yeah.
So like there's a whole Facebook groups and everything you can imagine to stay in touch. So it's very common, like in for example the Facebook group, which has thousands of people in it, because it's a smaller community and only 400 students graduate from Pomona each year. Like they'll say, hey, my company's hiring, but I want to look here first, because like I have a connection to this group. So like if you're seeking a job opportunity, like contact us. That's very, very common.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. You mentioned the school have a small size, so it sounds like it's something by design. Is that true?
Definitely.
So that student can get attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. You could probably look up data on Pomona College in the 1990s, from 2000 to 2010, and I would wager that the class size has fluctuated, less than 100 students either way. It's probably in and around 1,500, and it has been for decades. Yeah.
And then behind, did you have questions?
Yeah, so what are the strongest majors in Pomona?
What are the majors?
So
The strongest
majors. The strongest majors would be math, economics, the hard sciences, and computer science, as well as there's an emerging trend in the social sciences. But I think of all the 5 schools, Pomona has the most diverse set of majors. So there's, like, if you look at just the number of students graduating with a major, it's going to have the highest count of the different majors.
Yeah, it's got a pretty diverse. Yeah, if you were to look at the pie chart of students in each major, there would be a lot of slices, and not just one big one. For instance, English, I majored in English as well as philosophy, and philosophy had, in my class, 3 majors, three students, so almost no one. But English had a sizable amount. English had, I want to say 20 to 30 students, which out of a graduating class of 400 is, that's a sizable amount. Yeah, and that was a less popular major. So you're not going to find a major that's a barren wasteland, if that makes sense. You're not going to be a single kid in a major. And the other thing is the interdisciplinary approach sort of promotes, kids. Somebody in economics might take a philosophy course because it's required, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Computer science specifically, so I guess when I was a sophomore, the graduating class had 6 computer science majors, but it's scaled with demand as more and more people get into computer science. And I think last year's graduating class had something like 50 or 60 computer science majors, with, if you think proportionally, about 400 students graduating each year is a high percentage. So it's one of those things. I think the college is able to adapt pretty well to trends in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I answer a question and go forward?
Yeah, any more questions?
Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You go ahead.
So you mentioned that there are like freshman core courses that people have to take.
Mm-hmm.
Are those classes bigger because everyone has to take them?
So if I said freshman core, I misspoke. At Pomona, they're like the 5 areas of study. One is arts, one is like mathematics, one is social science, hard science, and then I'm blanking on the other. But you can take those any of the 4 years. For instance, the hard sciences were not my thing, so I put off taking a science course until I was a junior, and I took oceanography and for a semester and learned about that, and that was a core requirement. So not for my major. That was just every student needs this to graduate, but you don't have to knock those out as a freshman or a sophomore. You can take them whenever.
But some of those courses, like oceanography, would
Right.
have like a prereq, right? So maybe you have to take bio first.
So that one didn't. That oceanography one didn't. But yeah, some do, and some students are smart about it if they know, this is going to be their field. They'll take something like an intro, like the preliminary biology course, and that will serve as obviously their science, and then it will go on to work towards their major. But are those classes bigger? Not typically. Just insofar as an intro class is going to be bigger anyways, because kids are maybe trying out that field or knocking out a requirement, and then as you increase in difficulty and speciality, there will be less and less students.
Yeah, and then my other question is, for Pomona, does applying ED 1 or 2 like actually increase your chances?
It's sad that he left because he's an interviewer, so he knows that, and yes, it does. I just don't know by how much. I think we split on that, so I didn't apply ED, and I got in, and I think he did apply ED. I'm not sure which one, and he also got in. But I would say, I didn't apply ED anywhere, which I don't necessarily recommend. You should probably do that, because you have one to burn, and there's a reason. It's a tool. So yeah, I would say it's a good, if you're set on one of the schools, definitely do it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, you might know some colleges in East Coast like William Amherst, in terms of academics and the culture. Could you give us some advice on difference between those colleges in East Coast?
Yeah.
I think you must know the MIT, the difference between MIT and Stanford.
Right. So I do know. I would say the differences are more nuanced, as they're both liberal arts colleges. There is a culture of more sort of acceptance and laid back, less cutthroat, sink or swim out west. It's more communal, students helping each other out, whereas on the East Coast, and this is true of liberal arts colleges and universities, it's a little more cutthroat, it's a little more competitive rather than collaborative, as Matt was talking about. So one of the big things though is for a lot of kids on this side of the country is being able to be close to home. If you live in the Bay Area, it's 5 or 6 hour drive to the Claremont Colleges. But also jobs. Pomona, Claremont Mckenna, Harvey Mudd, they're all nationally recognized, but their recognition goes even further in the Bay Area, because it's just a regional thing. Tech companies out here have experienced, countless students from these colleges, so they have even more confidence than, say, a company out on the East Coast. So if the student knows that they want to live in California or move to California after college, it's a better bet to go to a California school such as one of the 5 Cs, because they have more sway when it comes to jobs. Just like, a school like Williams is going to have a little bit more sway. Williams is an excellent school. It's going to have a little more sway out east. So that's not really a cultural difference, but it's a post-collegiate sort of difference. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, regarding to the interviews, you recommend students to schedule interview. Is that including both on campus and local, or anyway?
Yeah, so you can do it either way. If you're in the area, so I did it on site because I was an athlete in college, so I was visiting to tour the athletic facilities, and I just popped in for an on-site interview, which you can do there. You can also, I do not know, I think you can do it through the website, but you can also contact Matt directly, and he can set you up because he is like a registered interviewer. But if you do it through the website, they will give you a list of interviewers in your area. and there are lots in the Bay Area. Yeah.
So it's the interview, you have to apply, right? After you apply to the school, the college,
right.
Then they will notify you that you can interview.
Right,
so
yes.
they might have a filter, like filter out, like you are not qualified even for interview, right?
Right. So
you have to wait until they notify you.
I believe so.
Okay.
And if not, you know, an interviewer can tell you it's like, well, your SAT score is pretty awful, or you know, etc. And they'll be able to tell you candidly, you know, this might not be a good fit for you. But I don't know how much filtering goes on, you know, between applying and interviewing, because that would require the college to do some screening that they're going to do anyways eventually, but they're going to do it after they have the interviewer's notes, you know what I mean? So, but again, that's a good question for Matt. He would know better. But he will have some data on you, you know, on the student while interviewing them, definitely.
So is there any indication that the students to enroll in the courses in Pomona from the other 4 colleges? Because I think Pomona is the highest ranked in the 5 colleges.
It is.
So is there any limitation for the other students
to
enroll?
Yeah, there is. So there was a question about that earlier, and it's there is a quota given in most Pomona classes to students from the other schools. So let's say, the other thing is, so classes at the Claremont Colleges are small. They're not given in big auditoriums where the professor's 100 feet away. It's in small rooms, maybe this size. So the limit of a course is usually not met. It's usually 10 to 15 students, but it can be up to 20 or 30. So they'll sometimes stretch it if there's demand, but most courses will have a quota for non-college attending students. So you say class of 20 students, 15 of them are Pomona. Pomona gets 15, but then 5 for the other schools, guaranteed. And then you can petition to have more, or if not enough Pomona kids sign up. But also if you're an upperclassman and you need it for your major, you're given preferential treatment sometimes, and that you don't have to attend Pomona for that to be the case. So yeah, but the point is that there is space. There's always space reserved for kids from other colleges. Yes.
Is it relatively easy to transfer between colleges? Like, if
yeah, that's a good question. I think it depends on the program, and it depends on which college, like which way you're going. It also depends on which classes you've taken. But I knew at least 3 transfer students who came into Pomona, which is year by year the most difficult college to get into, and they came from, one from Scripps, one from Claremont Mckenna, and I can't remember where the other one came from, but it does occur, yeah. And oftentimes it happens because you get there, and let's say you apply to Pitzer, and you get into Pitzer, and then you realize what you really want to do is gender studies, or what you really want to do is engineering, and you're like, well, you know, all the classes I want to take are at Scripps or Harvey Mudd. At some point you might be like, I'm going to try to transfer. And that happens to a lot of students, because while all the colleges offer many majors, some specialize in certain ones or offer classes or have certain professors the kids really like. Yeah.
I have a question regarding scholarship.
Yeah.
So, especially regarding merit-based scholarship, do you have any information?
Pomona does not offer merit-based scholarship. I can say that, and I think that applies to all colleges. It's all need-based. Obviously, their kids, their third-party scholarships like Quest Bridge, but yeah, the financial aid is need-based, though. There are awards given for students sort of in attending the college. These don't go necessarily towards tuition, but students will get research grants like SERP or other awards in each department. But those are usually not for tuition, but for research opportunities, stuff like that. And then students also have the opportunity to make money at school through paid internships offered through the college over summer, through stuff like being an RA, which means working in the residence halls as somebody that students can go to and ask questions, or if they get locked out of their room, stuff like that. And you can, cut $10,000 off your tuition by being an RA. There's also work study. I worked at the library and I just help people, check out books, but some kids will grade papers. Upper level math students will grade assignments and tests for, entry level students, stuff like that. So there are a ton of job opportunities, and these jobs are often really academic in nature. You can work in a lab, stuff like that.
But still, this kind of job is only, like, the income you get from this is only account for a small amount of your tuition.
Yeah.
Like, a very
usually.
small amount.
Well, yeah, you don't have a lot of time to work, sadly, as you'll be in class or whatever. But I would find most students are, if they are taking out loans, they are relatively small loans. Students aren't coming out of Pomona $80,000 in debt. That doesn't happen. $10,000, $20,000 in debt, yeah, maybe, but not these big numbers you hear, 100, 200,000. That doesn't happen. And then, a sizable percentage of kids are getting jobs straight out of college, and a sizable percentage of kids are getting merit-based financial aid for their graduate programs, should they choose to go that way. So it kind of works out in the end, yeah.
So the graduate program you talk about is at Pomona or is outside?
So the 5 Cs they're not graduate schools, all undergraduate. There are the 2 graduate colleges in Claremont, and a lot of students do go there, but no, I was talking about, Matt's friend at Stanford. I had a close friend who went to Cambridge. These are the places where, there'll be Fulbright scholars or et cetera. They'll get financial awards that way through, graduate institutions across the country and the world.
Sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
So how much is the regular class size? Like for class which is not that popular, just like not very popular, no, yeah.
Average class
size. How many students?
I would say 10 to 15, depending on the college. Yeah. Go ahead.
So what are the major ranking in Pomona, like engineering, computer science, or English?
Right. So how are each of them ranked? Like, it varied. Like as Matt said as he was leaving, computer science used to be small at Pomona. Now it's one of the biggest majors, and it's quite.
No. I mean ranking in all over the universities.
You mean?
Nationwide. The major ranking.
Okay, so I don't know about how they rank individually. I haven't seen metrics on. So you're saying like Pomona's computer science is #1 in the country or something like that. Is that what you mean? Yeah. So I haven't encountered metrics on specific majors. I can tell you. I can pull. Well, I can't match a computer, but I can tell you what the college itself is ranked. But to find out the sort of ranking for a major, you'd want to look at stuff like how many students are getting jobs, outside, how many students are getting research opportunities, what's the student satisfaction, like who are the faculty, stuff like that. But I don't know of any metrics on, ranking these majors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this number, actually we went to Williams and Amherst. They show some data like how many people go to this field and that field.
Right.
For example, Williams, the majority, went to be attorneys, go to law field.
Yeah.
So do you have any rough idea for Pomona? How many, in terms of percentage, how many graduates went to medical school, medicine school, medicine?
Yeah, my data is more anecdotal. I knew several kids who were planning on going to medical school from Pomona. I'm not sure how it was prevalent, though not incredibly popular. at Pomona specifically, but it was a sizable percentage of students. I would say somewhere near 20% of the kids were going to medical. Were planning on going to medical school. And one thing I can speak to is their majors were very different. You know, some were biology, some were psychology, some were neuro, some were English even, you know, with the pre-med track. So you would be an English major, but then you would take all the classes necessary for pre-med. So that was not a major, but a track you needed to complete so you'd be prepared for medical school, the MCATs and stuff like that. But I believe that the schools report that kind of data. What happens to their graduating students? You know, where as long as alumni report, then they have data. So one place to go for that would just be the college's website, because yeah, it's definitely a big help, and they usually are pretty transparent about that. And then also Wikipedia, you know, has a few conglomerate pages of all the 5 C's together, with obviously, if you want the real sources, they're cited at the bottom, but those are some easily viewable tables and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How about the safety in the community?
What's that?
Safety.
Oh, it's very safe. So.
Very good. Retirement. It makes sense. Senior people nearby.
Yeah, so you got the college, which is almost a bubble, and then yeah, senior community around. It's nice, it's slow. It's almost too slow for the kids sometimes. But then LA, Los Angeles is 30 miles away, so it's not that far. I would describe it as the colleges are safe, this is safe, this is not so safe, you know, it's like that. So if you wanna get into trouble, you have to drive a little bit, but it's not too far away.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt took. If you guys, if anyone wants my email or Matt's email and you didn't get it, I can give it to you right now. You can email me whenever you want, and I can happily answer your questions.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Have a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yes, anytime.
One more question. How about the life in the campus and the class, the students' class?
Oh, the clubs. Yeah, there's a ton of clubs. You know, it seems like there's a club for every student. Some of the clubs are really, really popular and really build networks. So Matt, who left, he was a part of AMP, which is Asian American Mentoring Program, and that, you know, helps kids of Asian backgrounds. You know, they come in and they get paired with a mentor who helps them, you know, choose the right classes, you know, make friends, stuff like that. But there are clubs for. There's a women's club. These are just some of them. There's an international students club. So my roommate freshman year is from Singapore, and he was very active in the international students club. I can't remember what his actual name was. But yeah, and if there isn't, if you're looking for a club, and it's not at Pomona, it's going to be at one of the other, you know, there are a lot of clubs, and they get funding as well. So they're able to do things like field trips, sometimes group research, you know, they have meeting places, stuff like that.
How about sports?
What?
Sports. Sports life in the
Oh, sports, yeah, so I play basketball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, students, I mean, it's something to do on campus. You attend sporting events, you can play sports. For those students, you know, who played in high school or are good enough, they can play varsity and compete against other colleges. But then you can also play club sports. You know, if you want to do it just for fun. The athletic facilities are really nice. So even if you're just trying to stay in shape, you can go enjoy stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It's a nice place to be. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, you need your email?
Yes, I can.
So you're an English major?
I was.